I am 106 years old. I have watched wars begin and end. I have buried a husband, 2 sisters, and one of my own children. I have seen the stock market crash 3 times. I have lived through things that would make your knees buckle just hearing about them. And I am telling you right now, the scariest day of my entire life was not any of those things. The scariest day of my life was a Tuesday afternoon in October when I sat at my kitchen table, opened my bank statement, and watched the numbers tell me a story I was not prepared to hear. I was 79 years old. I had been retired for 15 years, and I was almost completely out of money. $600,000 gone, not stolen, not lost in some dramatic crash overnight, gone quietly, slowly, in ways I never saw coming because nobody ever sat me down and told me the truth about what retirement actually costs. I thought I had done everything right. I thought I was one of the smart ones. I was wrong. And if you are sitting there right now thinking that what happened to me could never happen to you, please keep watching. Because the mistakes I made are the same mistakes millions of people are making this very moment, and most of them have no idea. Before I tell you my story, I want to ask you one small thing. If anything I say today makes you stop and think, if anything I say helps you protect what you have worked your whole life to build, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that button right now, because the people here are doing something rare. They are telling you the truth about money and retirement before it is too late, not after. I wish someone had done that for me. I truly wish they had. Now let me take you back to the beginning. It was 1982. I was 64 years old, and I had just finished the last shift of my career as a school administrator in a mid-sized district in Ohio. 31 years. I had given that school system 31 years of my life, and I walked out of those doors with a pension, a small Social Security benefit, and a personal savings account that held just over $600,000. In 1982, that felt like an enormous amount of money. My neighbors thought I was wealthy. My children thought I was set for life. My financial advisor, a man I trusted completely, a man who played golf with my husband every other Sunday, told me I had nothing to worry about. I believed him. That was my first mistake. I want you to understand something about the mindset I had going into retirement, because I think a lot of you share it. I had spent my entire adult life saving carefully, spending modestly, and doing what I was told. I clipped coupons. I drove used cars. I packed lunches. I told myself for 3 decades that if I just reached that number, that magic number, everything would be fine. And when I reached it, I exhaled. I put down the weight I had been carrying. I stopped being careful because I believed I had earned the right to stop being careful. That exhale cost me everything. The first thing nobody told me was how deeply inflation would eat into my savings over a long retirement. Now, you hear the word inflation and maybe your eyes glaze over. Maybe it sounds like an economics lecture. But let me make it personal for you. When I retired in 1982, a gallon of milk cost about $1.50. A doctor's visit, if you paid out of pocket, might run you $25. A decent dinner out for 2 people was maybe $15 with a tip. I built my entire retirement budget around those numbers. I said to myself, I spend roughly $2,000 a month to live comfortably. I have $600,000. That gives me 25 years, maybe more if I invest carefully. I thought I had done the math, but I had done the math for a world that was going to stop changing. And the world never stops changing. By the time I was in my late 70s, that same lifestyle cost me nearly 4 times as much. Not because I got greedy, not because I started living lavishly, simply because the price of everything, food, utilities, gas, insurance, medicine, had quietly, steadily marched upward every single year while my savings did not keep pace. I was living on the same amount I had always lived on, but that amount bought me less and less with every passing year, and I did not notice the erosion until it was almost complete. My financial advisor had put most of my money in conservative bonds and a savings account. Safe, he said. Stable, he said. And he was right. It was stable. It was also slowly being murdered by inflation. The interest I was earning was lower than the rate at which prices were rising. Every single year, in real terms, I was losing money while thinking I was doing fine. If he had put even a portion of my savings in investments that could grow with the economy, the story I am telling you today would have a very different ending. But he was from a generation that believed the stock market was for gamblers, and I trusted him, and that trust became one of the most expensive decisions of my life. That is Chapter 1. Inflation and the danger of playing it too safe with your money. But there are 2 more chapters to this story, and they are, if anything, even more important. So stay with me. Here is what I did not know when I retired at 64. I did not know I was going to live this long. I know that sounds almost funny when I say it out loud. A 106-year-old woman telling you she did not plan to live this long. But that is exactly the truth, and it is a truth that almost nobody in retirement planning talks about honestly. When I sat across from my financial advisor in 1982 and we mapped out my retirement, we planned for approximately 20 years. He said, "Margaret," that is my name, Margaret, "Margaret, you are in good health. Your family history is solid. We should plan for you to live to around 85, maybe 90 if we're being generous." I thought that sounded reasonable. I thought that sounded even a little pessimistic, frankly. My grandmother had lived to 82. My mother made it to 88. 85 to 90 seemed like a perfectly sensible estimate. I am 106 years old. I have outlived my plan by more than 2 decades. This is what the financial industry calls longevity risk, and it is the single most underestimated danger in retirement planning today. People are living longer than ever before in human history. Medical advances, better nutrition, improved quality of life. All of it means that the average retirement today is not 10 years or 15 years. It can be 30 years. It can be 40 years. And almost nobody is saving with that timeline in mind. Almost everybody is still planning to live to 85 or 90, and those are the lucky ones. The unlucky ones, the ones who live longer, are the ones who end up like me. Let me tell you what outliving your plan actually looks like from the inside, because it does not happen all at once. It happens in a series of small, quiet adjustments that feel manageable until suddenly they are not. First, you cut the vacations. That is easy. You tell yourself you have seen plenty of the world anyway. Then you start eating out less. Fine, you say. Home cooking is healthier. Then you stop turning the heat up past 68 degrees in the winter because the utility bills have become something you actually worry about. And that is when a small alarm goes off somewhere in the back of your mind, because you remember a time when you did not worry about utility bills. Then one of your medications changes its coverage status and your out-of-pocket cost triples, and you start skipping doses to make the bottle last longer. And by the time you are doing that, by the time you are rationing your own medication, the crisis is no longer coming. The crisis is here. I want to stop for just a moment and ask you something sincerely. Are you subscribed to this channel yet? Because if you are not, I need you to do it right now, not later, now. The information on this channel, the real, honest, practical information about protecting your money in retirement, is the kind of information I would have sold my car to have access to when I was your age. Subscribe. It is free, and it might be one of the most valuable things you ever do for your financial future. Now, the second thing I did not do was account properly for healthcare costs in the later years of my life. And this mistake was catastrophic. I want to be very direct with you about this because it is where the largest chunk of my money disappeared, and it happened faster than I ever could have imagined. When you are 64 and healthy and just retired, health care feels manageable. You have Medicare. You have a small supplemental plan. Your doctor visits are routine. You are not really sick. You are just old. But here is what I learned, painfully and expensively, over the next 4 decades. The older you get, the more your body requires, not just routine visits, specialists, procedures, medications, home health aides, assisted living facilities, physical therapy, dental work that Medicare does not cover, vision care that Medicare does not cover, hearing aids that cost more than my first car and that Medicare does not cover. The list of things Medicare does not cover is longer than most people realize, and every single gap in that coverage is a hole that your savings have to fill. I needed a hip replacement at 81. I needed cataract surgery at 84. I needed a home health aide 3 days a week starting at 87 because I could no longer manage certain things on my own. And by 92, I needed full-time assisted living. Do you know what assisted living costs? In the facility where I lived, it was over $4,000 a month. That was in the mid-2000s. Today, facilities like that run $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month or more in many parts of the country. I had not saved a single dollar specifically for long-term care. Not one. Because nobody had told me I needed to. Nobody had sat me down and said, "Margaret, there is a very real chance that in the final chapters of your life, your medical costs alone will consume more money than you have budgeted for everything else combined." Nobody said that, and so I was not prepared. By the time my family had to step in to help, my daughter, bless her, who was in her 70s herself by that point, the savings were nearly gone. The pension helped. Social Security helped. But the cushion I had built with 31 years of careful saving had been slowly, steadily, completely consumed by a retirement that lasted far longer than anyone had planned for and cost far more in health care than I had ever imagined possible. That is Chapter 2, Longevity Risk, Health Care Costs, the twin disasters that nobody warns you about loudly enough. And now we have one chapter left, the most personal one, the one I almost did not include because it is the hardest to admit. There is a third reason I ran out of money, and it has nothing to do with math. It has nothing to do with interest rates or inflation or medical bills. It has to do with something far more human, far more understandable, and far more dangerous than any of those things. It has to do with the stories I told myself, the emotional decisions I made with money that I dressed up to look like rational ones. When you have been saving and sacrificing for your entire adult life, when you finally reach retirement with a number in your account that represents 30 years of packed lunches and used cars and saying no, something happens psychologically. You stop being able to see that money as something fragile. You see it as a reward, as proof of your discipline, as something that belongs to you in a way that is different from how your paycheck belonged to you. And that feeling, that sense of arrival, of having made it, makes it very easy to make emotional decisions that feel like you have earned the right to make them. I made 3 of those decisions, and each one took a significant bite out of what I had. The first was my daughter's house. She and her husband were struggling in the late 80s. They had 2 children, a mortgage they could not quite manage, and a marriage that was under serious strain. I gave them $60,000. I did not loan it. I gave it. Because I could. Because they needed it. Because I was their mother, and that is what mothers do. I do not regret it. I want to be clear about that. I do not regret it for a single second. But I also did not factor it into my retirement plan, and $60,000 taken out of a savings account in your late 60s, money that is no longer growing, no longer compounding, is not $60,000. It is far more than that by the time you are 90. The second decision was a vacation home. My husband had always wanted a small place on a lake in Michigan. He died at 71, just 7 years into our retirement, and I was grief-stricken, and I bought the lake house anyway, for him, in his memory, at a price I should not have paid. I kept it for 11 years. I used it maybe 15 times. I paid property taxes on it. I paid for maintenance on it. I paid for repairs on it. I finally sold it at a modest loss because I needed the money, and the market was not cooperating. That house cost me, in total, more than I ever want to calculate honestly. It was an emotional purchase, a grief purchase, and there is no budget line item for grief. The third decision was the one I am most ashamed of, not because it was wrong, but because I knew when I was doing it that it was risky, and I did it anyway. One of my son's friends came to me with a business idea in 1991. It sounded reasonable. It sounded profitable. My son vouched for him. I invested $45,000. Within 2 years, the business had failed, and the money was simply gone. No fraud, no malice, just a bad business in a bad market, run by someone who was better at pitching than at executing. $45,000 erased. None of these 3 decisions were stupid in isolation. People help their children. People honor their late husbands. People take a chance on a business idea that a trusted friend recommends. These are human things. They are loving things. But they are also things that I did not account for when I sat down in 1982 and told myself that $600,000 was enough. They are the things that nobody ever puts in the spreadsheet because they are not spreadsheet items. They are life items, and life has a way of being far more expensive than any spreadsheet. So what am I trying to tell you? I am 106 years old, and I have had a very long time to think about this. Here is what I know. Save more than you think you need. Whatever number you have in your head right now, double it, because you are going to live longer than you think you will, and the world is going to cost more than it does today, and your body is going to need things that your current plan does not account for. The math that made sense on the day you retired will not make sense 20 years later. It just will not. Invest for growth, not just safety. I know it is frightening to put your retirement money in anything that feels risky, but leaving it in something that earns less than inflation is not safe. It is slow motion loss. Find a balance. Keep some safe. Let some grow. The people who protected themselves from every possible downside also blocked themselves from the upside they desperately needed. Get long-term care insurance. I cannot stress this enough. It is not glamorous, it is not exciting, but the cost of care in the final years of your life has the power to wipe out decades of careful saving in a very short period of time. Protect yourself, protect your family, get the coverage before you need it, because by the time you need it, it is too late to get it. And plan for the unexpected. Not just the financial unexpected, the human unexpected. The child who needs help, the spouse who passes too soon, the investment that does not pan out. These things are not surprises. They are certainties. Somewhere in your retirement years, something like this will happen. The question is whether you have built a plan that can absorb it or whether it will break you. I am 106 years old. I have made it this far on a combination of stubbornness, the kindness of my family, a modest pension, and Social Security checks that I am deeply grateful existed. But I will tell you something honestly. The last 30 years would have looked very different if I had known at 64 what I know today. They would have felt different. they would have been less frightening. I would have spent less time lying awake at night doing math in my head, and more time simply being glad to be alive, and being alive is a remarkable thing, even at 106, maybe especially at 106. If my story helped you in any way, if it made you think, if it made you call your financial advisor, if it made you finally look at that long-term care policy you have been ignoring, then please do one thing for me. Subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone you love who is approaching retirement or already in it. Leave a comment below telling me what surprised you most. This community exists to have the conversations that nobody else is willing to have about money, about aging, and about what it really costs to build a life that lasts. My name is Margaret. I am 106 years old. And I am still here, still talking, still hoping that my story saves somebody else from learning these lessons the same hard way I did. Thank you for listening.